are now listening to Serious Minds RN TV with your host, Professor Griff. The call-in number is 516-654-7688. That's 516-654-7688. This is Professor Griff, and this is Serious Minds RN TV. Serious Minds for Serious Minds. Seriously. The Serious Minds Brain Tonic was created to sharpen the mind by protecting cells and increasing neurotransmitters associated with learning and memory. This is the Serious Minds Brain Tonic. The Resurrection Formula. This male reproductive tonic elixir is the resurrection you've been looking for. It is a stimulating sexual tonic with mild androgen-like effects that is nourishing to the reproductive system. You can order them at www.professorgriff.me and www.seriousmindsinstitute.com. Just call 678-557-2919. Your health is your wealth. Peace.
Doc, what's good with you, bro?
What's up? What's up, Griff? I'm good. Right? Can you hear me okay?
Yep, I see you just fine. Can you hear me?
Okay. Oh, yeah, I can hear you well.
All right, cool. We're waiting for Mr. LP, but without any further ado, we're gonna move right along. Just have him pop in when he get in. All right. Let me give the greetings to everyone. Greetings, everyone. How y'all feel? Hope everyone is all right, and welcome to Serious Minds RN TV. Somebody keeps asking me, why do you keep saying RN TV? What does that mean? When I first started this out, it was just abbreviation for radio and television. I knew I wanted to do radio. I didn't know it was going to morph into this whole visual thing. Pretty much StreamYard is new. If you wanted to be seen, you had to kind of go through Facebook. They had their new thing. You had to do YouTube. Or you were just on Instagram putting up pictures because Instagram didn't even allow video at one time. All right, so I just kind of positioned it that way. But anyway, tonight we're going to be talking about Kyle Rittenhouse, plural, casualties. Not necessarily him, not the trial, not what you think is going to go down. The casualties. And I hate when people say this, but no one's talking about this. I hate when people say that. Somebody in the world is talking about it. We just want to kind of bring it out in the open so we can discuss it. The casualties. We saw the short little footage of him shooting the individuals, but who tended to the victims? What kind of wounds did they have to the point where if the police was there, did the police ultimately get to the victims? How did they get to the hospital? Who called 911? We saw the police riding by Kyle Rittenhouse, throwing him a bottle of water.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, it's almost like we had two situations where we had people shoot people. With the Ahmaud Arbery case and the Kyle Rittenhouse case that's going not. Let me correct that. Not the Ahmaud Arbery case. It's the three white men who murdered him case, not his case. But we're witnessing in our time, white people shooting people and then going home at the end of the night. And where was the first aid for Ahmaud Arbery? Where was the first aid for these victims of Kyle Rittenhouse? So we're going to dive into that tonight. I want to let everyone know, Doc, you got any classes coming up?
Currently, I don't have anything going on, but nope. So Well, yeah. Well, actually, I have a class tomorrow, so I'm out here out here. So I don't have anything locally going on. I'll put it like that. But I do have a class I'm teaching tomorrow.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
We're looking forward to seeing everybody on December 12th at 7 o'clock for this first 48 seconds. Before the first 48, or after the first 48, pardon me. It's some valuable information that we want to impart to the people, so we want to see y'all on deck. And I will be at in East Point, man, teaching with my man Stone Harrington, the gentleman who certified me under the USCCA.
Okay.
I see Scott, the gentleman that certified me under the NRA. I see him every week. Cool guy, wealth of knowledge. He's still active in the game and that kind of thing. But I'll be with Stone Harrington on December 11th, right in East Point, teaching a basic firearms class. In 2022, the first half of 2022, the first month, we're going to go back to basics, man. We got to put the basics back in place because I'm starting to see people running and gunning, finger on the trigger and all kind of stuff. I'm like, let's put the basics back in place. All right, let's dive into this. All right, so this Kyle Rittenhouse Casualties, what is your take on how the victims were treated? If I could ask that question.
Right. So for that case, the situation is going on up there in with that particular incident with Kyle. So I did see some of the video that came out, kind of pretty much after the early on when the event took place. And so I would like to say I would basically call them street medics, because basically what happened in particular, there was actually some good footage of the guy who one of the last individuals that Kyle shot. He ended up blowing off, I think it's like his right bicep or something, a good part of his arm. And there is actually a picture, and there was some video on out there on the internet showing a gentleman who was actually giving the guy first aid, medical care, bandaging up that arm. He actually had like a Red Cross emblem on his outfit, identifying him as a medical person amongst the folks who were out there, expressing their freedom of speech, protester, whatever you want to call it. The other folks that had got shot, the individuals that got killed, especially the one gentleman who chased them through the parking lot, got shot like 4 times.
Right.
In the videos, you see where there was other individuals who was out there providing the care that they could provide. Really, they can't do too much of anything. They just kind of comfort them. Somebody had a little pressure on his head or neck. Well, that's probably was the extent of any kind of medical care they was providing that gentleman. And the other gentleman that had got shot around that same time when they was chasing them down, I think he got a couple rounds to the chest or what have you. I didn't see anybody providing any kind of medical care to him. So,
all right, so let me bring LP in. He just popped on. Greetings, good brother. How you feel?
I feel good. How you doing?
All right, man. You took a deep breath just now. What happened, man? All right.
Oh, we'll talk about it later.
Huh?
We'll talk about it later.
All right, we were just talking about the casualties surrounding the Kyle Rittenhouse kind of shooting. And then Doc was laying out, person by person their wounds, and he just mentioned the fact that the people that came to their aid was basically, he would title them street medics.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you know or whatever you know, whether you took a class at the Y or the youth center or the whatever, or you just saw something online, or you just kind of, like for me, in my case, my mom was an RN. So I knew some basics of my brother was an RN, I think, also. So I kind of picked up some things from them. But Doc was kind of laying that out, and I was just basically saying, so Kyle Rittenhouse himself had some training. At what point should he have rendered aid?
Well,
obviously know he shot.
Hey, two caveats real quick before Larry chime in. Cherry,
yeah.
1 second, Larry. I'm not saying I did reference a guy. I said street medic. Not saying he wasn't medically trained though.
Okay.
He could have actually been trained, and he had like a medical emblem, the cross on his own insignia. So he could have been a paramedic EMT type guy. I just used the term street medic, meaning that he didn't come in on an ambulance or EMS vehicle or something like that. And I don't know to what extent of training he actually may have had. But yeah, that's the term I use with.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry about that. I stand to be corrected. I'm going to begin to visit the same barbershop you guys visit because I'm there.
Hey, you gotta let it go sooner or later, Griff. I know you're trying to hold on to it.
Trying to hold on. You know the dude at the club that won't let it go, and he start combing it to the side. Yeah, he's still wearing bell bottoms, just won't let him go, bro. But I'll say, so what's your take on it, Mr. LP? The fact that Kyle Rittenhouse had some kind of degree of training, and there were some people, on the scene right there that did render some aid. We don't really hear too much about the casualties because we're caught up into the trial, but there were some people that were dying as people were filming.
Well, it was the testimony that I saw and that has been talked about verifies that he actually only had training as a lifeguard. He was not an EMT. He's not a certified EMT. He's not a licensed EMT. He's not a certified paramedic. He's not a licensed paramedic. Let me talk to you from the perspective of me, who is not only a certified and licensed EMT, but I also got my certification and my license, and I still have my license as a paramedic. Anybody, and I mean anybody, man, woman, whatever ethnicity, doesn't matter. Anybody that claims to be an EMT and or a paramedic and they don't have those certifications and those licensures, to me, that's a problem because you diminish people like myself. The term that a lot of times I hear I'm referred to as is ambulance driver. It's almost like a slur. And back in the days, we were more ambulance drivers. But as technology and as training and as the profession has grown, we're not just, EMT stands for emergency medical technician. We're not just technicians anymore. We are clinicians. We are pre-hospital healthcare providers. When people ask me, what do I do for a living? Or, before I retired, I never told anybody I was an ambulance driver. I would say, I'm a paramedic. Well, what does a paramedic do? Well, I provide I practice pre-hospital emergency medicine. I'm not faking out here. You asked me a couple of weeks ago on one of the shows that we did if law enforcement was to come up to me and they saw me rendering aid, do I have any ID? Yes, I have a badge that's in my wallet. I have my paramedic license card in my wallet. I have my certifications in my wallet. Kyle Rittenhouse didn't have any of those things. So for him to sit here and claim that he's EMT or he's a medic, it's a slap in the face to everybody who wears the badge, who went through all the training, went through all the clinicals, did all the work. That's just to say that.
Well, we will talk about the casualties.
And as far as the casualties,
I don't want to focus on him.
Sure. And as far as the casualties in terms of helping people, I would say that one thing that we do when we graduate from our EMT and our paramedic program is we take an oath. And that oath is part of the Hippocratic Oath. And the first line in that oath is, first do no harm. If you're not going to adhere to that, then don't take the oath. You know, I remember one time I was working and the guy threatened me. And, you know, the department that I worked for, they were no nonsense because we dealt with a lot of people that didn't have a lot of regard for us. And, you know, my department was like, we don't take any L's. You know, you want to come after us because our from the top down, it was like you can meet resistance equal or less. You know, so if somebody slapped me, I couldn't turn around and hit them with a brick or something like that. You know, and we used to tell people we don't take L's. You know, if you're gonna attack us, we have the right and the back end to attack back to defend ourselves.
Right.
So when this guy is walking around with an AR-15, you know, you bring in heat to an already infernal situation,
Right.
and you know you can't have it both ways. You can't be like, oh, I'm going to come in here with all this heat, and then I'm going to turn around and I'm going to try to treat people. And then I'm going to turn around and I'm going to wound people. And then I'm going to treat people. And then I'm going to turn around and kill somebody. And then I'm going to treat somebody else. And then I'm going to kill another guy. You know, you can't have it both ways. And this is not a situation where nowadays some departments are allowing their EMT or their EMS workers to be tactical paramedics where they can actually carry a firearm with them. He was not any of those things. So my answer to that is you can't have it both ways. You can't treat and harm at the same time.
Okay. All right. Let me just reiterate the fact that, and I'm seeing it being reflected in the comments. I do not want to focus on anything else but the casualties.
Sure.
We're on here to render first aid information and a degree of education to educate people on even in those hostile kind of situations, regardless to what degree of education you have or training that you have, you could render some first aid. Am I correct in saying that?
Absolutely.
So whatever training Kyle had, whatever training, help me out, Doc. I don't want to miss you. I don't want to say the wrong thing. Whoever, whether they were street medics or they were trained, they still had an obligation, according to what LP just gave us, to render some first aid. Am I right or wrong?
I wouldn't say they're obligated, but you know, yeah, they're not obligated, you know, but you know they chose to do so, and like I said, the street medic term that I use, that could be like you know, somebody who just went through a first aid class, or it could be somebody who's out there on the street, part of the movement, part of the protesting that was going on, or part of the exercising their right to freedom of speech, however we want to define it, that has some kind of medical training, that witnessed someone getting hurt and decided to assist. So, but as far as are they obligated, you know, no, I wouldn't say they are.
Oh, okay.
Larry, you got a
Yeah.
different take on that obligation piece?
No, because I was going to add that, you know, we look at the Good Samaritan laws that are in place on the books, and the Good Samaritan laws cover professionals and non-professionals who would go and render aid. Now, I don't know if part of his defense was to say, well, I was a Good Samaritan as well as I was there to, you know, protect the properties of the people that hired me to come down there to protect the properties. But as far as being a Good Samaritan, the laws state that anyone, regardless of license or certification, that decides to render aid, that doesn't do any more harm to the person that's already hurt or injured, is pretty much covered as far as any liabilities. So if his only goal was to go down there and help people, then that's fine because you can help somebody just picking up the phone and calling 911. Hey, running down the street, there's some cops. Hey, we see some guys down here that are injured. hey, can you go call 911? Hey, can you go grab this medical bag from, somebody dropped on the street or whatever? Can you hand me your shirt because this guy's bleeding out? Let me stop this bleeding or whatever. There's many ways you can provide assistance in any scenario, and we've been talking about that for the last 6 weeks.
Right. I'm going to share my screen and just kind of show some information that you gave us, Mr. LP, just to kind of at least get some kind of idea of what we're talking about and what's happening. Hold on.
When you get a chip in your windshield, trust Safelight. This couple counts on their SUV as they travel for their small business. So when they got a chip in their windshield, they brought it to Safelight for a same-day in-shop repair. We repaired the chip right away, and with their insurance, it was no cost to them. Plus, to protect their glass, we installed new wipers too. That service the way you need it.
Safe like repair, safe like replace.
Kyle Rittenhouse is set to go on trial next week for murder. The teenager killed 2 people in Kenosha, Wisconsin during protests last year in the aftermath of the Jacob Blake police shooting. Now, what has a lot of people paying attention this morning is a pretty controversial decision by the judge in a pre-trial hearing, as there were some ground rules set that the prosecution is not happy with.
The word victim is a loaded word. And I think alleged victim is a cousin to it. Let the evidence show what the evidence shows, and if the evidence shows that any or more than one of these people were engaging in arson, rioting, or looting, then I'm not going to tell the defense they can't call them that.
Okay, Early Star co-anchor and attorney and legal reporter Laura Jarrett joins us now. Let me just make crystal clear what happened there in case people didn't get it. The judge just said that the people Kyle Rittenhouse killed, and there's no dispute over the fact that he killed them, they cannot be called victims, the people that he killed. They can, the judge says, however, be called rioters and looters.
And that's the part I think people are finding so disturbing. The prosecution.
Okay, if we are going to, I had to pause it, okay? If we are going to render aid, just the mere fact that you're not rendering aid to a victim, that you're rendering aid to a rioter or a looter. So can I ask you guys something just from off the rip? Why do police officers, after they shoot someone, they render aid? If you can't render aid to someone that, who's out there protesting, can you render aid to a protester?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Larry.
Yes. Oh, okay. It makes me think about a few trials in recent history. By law, let's look at this case, and we can also look at George Floyd. So one of the things that the prosecutors were successful in prosecuting that case, in the Floyd case, was those 4 officers. Well, let's just deal with Chauvin because he's the one that's been prosecuted so far. His obligation once Floyd was in his custody is the premise is, once you have somebody in your custody, they're in your care, whether it's law enforcement, EMS, fire, what have you. That person or those people become your baby. And if they are hurt, injured, dying, or dead, you have a responsibility as a first responder. You're still a police officer in that situation. You're still an EMT. You're still a paramedic. You're still a firefighter in that situation. However, you become the medical person for that person or those people until either higher help comes in terms of higher licensed professionals or more people come to transport that person to the proper facility. So in this case, any law enforcement person has a duty to render medical aid. And in my experience, where I worked, whether it was the fire department or the private EMS service, we would have people that would, let's say a law enforcement issue happens. Somebody get pulled over for a broken taillight or whatever. They get arrested. They go to jail. While they're in jail, they start complaining about chest pain or something like that. Immediately, they got to call the police have to call 911. We would show up at the jail, do an examination of the person, and at that point, we would make a determination if that person was to be transported to the hospital or not, even if they were transported while they were still in custody, depending on the crime or what have you. So you have a responsibility to render aid no matter what the crime is.
Okay.
That might be, I don't know, shit, it's just been too many situations where you see, especially like with a lot of these shootings, police shootings, and you got the guy laying on the street, ain't nobody giving them no kind of medical care. So, so I don't know if that's a jurisdiction thing. I know Larry just mentioned it's a requirement or obligation, but I guess you got a lot of folks who ain't fulfilling those obligations because there's been too many incidents where you have you just shoot, situation has happened. The guy, the individual's laid out on the street, handcuffed and bleeding to death, and ain't nobody giving them no kind of medical care. So, I would definitely have I would have a question in regards to that right there. Is it an obligation, a moral obligation? Is a jurisdiction obligation, or is shit, you do it if you want to obligation,
So Mike Brown laid out there for a while.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's you get a lot of that.
Right. And I could go on and on and on and lay out each case and show you the situations, but it's like it doesn't seem like it worked in our favor, so to speak. All right.
Yeah. They're supposed to, though.
Pardon me?
Unfortunately, I said they're supposed to, but like you said, it's just I think that with the advent of these body cams, more of these law enforcement officers are going to be called on the carpet, or they're going to be, they're going to be prosecuted more, and they're going to face more consequences, especially if it's on camera. And you don't even have to worry about the body cam because now everybody has a camera and they're recording these situations and stuff. So these camera footage videos that bystanders are submitting to these police departments and these prosecutors are showing that, hey, this guy didn't even render aid or whatever. And so you have more of these law enforcement professionals, if we want to call them that, that are being prosecuted, and they're getting disciplined for not rendering aid because, again, they're supposed to now. Like Doc said, are they doing it? They're being more subjective or discriminatory on who they give it to and in what situations, but they're supposed to by law.
Let me share the screen once again. I mean, I'm feeling some kind of way about that because I used to compete in martial arts, right? When you get to the tournament, you pretty much start to see the same people that you compete against in your ranking, in your weight, in your belt situation, whether you're a brown belt, you're competing with all brown belts, black belts. When I moved up to black belt and I started seeing some of the same guys, they became friends. But when it was time for me to give them these hands, I got to disconnect. You understand what I'm saying? So how is it that you could, put a couple of holes in somebody, then flip that around all of a sudden and that didn't render aid? It's just where I'm driving at with wanted to have this conversation tonight about the victims. Because how do we begin then to understand these situations, not through the lens of a victim, or what do they call them, Doc? They call them rioters and
rioters and looters.
Right. Looters, everything but a victim,
Right. How could you be a firefighter, an EMS? How could you be in this situation that you two brothers are in, coming to a scene and you know you have a disdain for women, and there's women hurt, and you got to render aid. You going through a divorce, but now this woman laying out bleeding, you got to kind of take care of her. How does that work? What goes on?
I think that comes down to the individual and how serious they are about their duties in their responsibilities. I mean, some people, you know, they take oaths, they raise their hand and say, yeah, I'm gonna do all kind of stuff. But deep down inside, you know, they have those biases that they know more than likely they're not, or won't, or going to be hesitant about it. You know, so I think it comes down strictly, in many cases, down to the individual and how they really feel about, you know, maybe it could be a racial thing, political thing, moral thing, but I think it's an individual choice.
Right. Okay. I mean, that makes totally perfect good sense to me because, yeah, like I said, I was in some of those situations where, you know, even having to, you know, to discuss martial arts and martial arts films and martial arts history and that kind of thing with people that I know that probably a month from now I'm going to be fighting and competing against. But anyway, all right. There was a football player who saw one of the guys on the other team get knocked out cold, and he went to go render aid. And you know the EMS, they run on the field real quick. They pulled the player away from the guy. Now this guy on the opposite side of the team, one of his players, one of his the guys on his team knocked the dude out cold with a hit. But you still got to turn and render aid is what I was driving at. What happens in the mind. But anyway, let me share the film. The clip.
Prosecution is calling it a double standard. And in reality, they're dead. They cannot defend themselves at this trial, right? And typically, when there's an agreement that somebody has been harmed in some way, injured, or been killed, victim is an accepted term. There are defense lawyers who've been arguing for years that it is prejudicial, that it implies guilt, and that it taints the jury's mind. Courts are split on this. Jury instructions use the term victim all the time. Some people define it in different ways. But at bottom here, what you're pointing out is that the judge took it a step further by saying that the people who died should be cast in the light for the crimes that they committed, when in fact people go to jail for killing people who commit crimes all the time. And so I think that's the part that's really got people's attention. And if you're the prosecutor on the case, you're going to say this is extremely prejudicial. But there's not much they can do about it. Because remember, if Kyle Rittenhouse gets off on this, if he's found not guilty, they cannot retry him.
Yeah, there's not an appeal for the prosecution. That's not how it works.
Exactly. And so it's interesting. I think, you know, one of the things to remember is why is this even coming up, right? Rittenhouse is going to say self-defense. He's going to say, I was so afraid from all of these looters and arsonists. But evidence 101 tells you that is not going to fly. And that's why this evidence shouldn't have been let in, because whether someone was setting fire to a building nearby should have no bearing on whether Kyle Rittenhouse was afraid for his life and thought that it was okay to shoot that person, right? That those two.
All right. And I think that's where I have the issue. I have the issue with the mindset of an EMS worker, the mindset of a medic, the mindset of a firefighter. Mind you, they don't really talk about the clip that you sent me, LP, had another gentleman in there with the AR-15. And they were patrolling. They were with the mindset that they were going to use deadly force to protect property, which is, it don't fly. You understand what I'm saying? With that same mindset, are you going to go out now and render aid? Because I'm sure there was other people that were hurt that night. Did Kyle, any of his buddies, render any aid? Are you following what I'm saying?
Yes.
Because I came there just to destroy. I don't have the mindset that I'm going to save some lives. I came with the mindset that I'm going to take lives. Am I right or wrong? Help me out.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you know, we know what's really going on with all this. I mean, so it really is. I mean, so right now they just going through the motion.
Yeah.
That guy ain't come out there to help nobody, and so we know that. So with that being said, and why would you even think he would help the person he just shot, well, regardless of the training, because that was never his intent. Now, we looking at the court case. Of course, they saying he had all this training. He's EMT this and junior law enforcement cat in training. He come to find out, hell, he was training to be a janitor or something, at the swimming pool. I mean, he was a lifeguard. He really didn't. He wasn't no EMT. He wasn't none of that he claimed to be. But they using that as part of the defense. But once again, going back to his intention, I do not think was to provide medical care to anybody, unless it was maybe one of the cats he's out there with, but definitely nobody he was shooting at for sure.
Right. Do you think a lot of times when you see these people wearing IFAKs on their belt, you think it's just a show?
Yeah, a lot of them is for sure. I mean, I trained a lot of them cats. I mean, that's one of the first things I ask people when I do training, a lot, because, we all into this tactical stuff, everybody want to be tacked up. So one of the items, a lot of people, we talk about the importance of having medical equipment and medical gear with you. But there are a lot of individuals who have medical gear that ain't never even looked inside the medical kit. They don't even know what's in it, let alone know how to use it. And, that's where we come in at. That's our role, educate and empower. So, but yeah, to answer your question, Griff, yeah, a lot of folks have the stuff, they don't know how to use it or don't know how to use it properly.
Right. And your take on that, Mr. LP, sir?
Want to veggie back what Doc said, you can have the equipment, you can have the best of the equipment, but if you don't know how to use it, never open it up. Some things in these first aid kits have expiration dates on them. If you look at, and I tell people all the time, if you have just a regular first aid kit, because he didn't have the medical bag he had from what I've seen in the trial, he didn't have an IFAK. He just had a medical bag. He just had a first aid kit. So just Band-Aids and bandages and gauze and stuff like that or whatever. Some of these first aid kits just have basic stuff in them. And like if they have medications and different things like that, those things expire. So if you're going to put any ointment on something, or you want to give somebody a Tylenol or Benadryl or something like that, you got to look and see what the expiration date is on it. And a lot of people aren't even doing that stuff.
Right.
And even to get deeper into answering your question, and again, I'm just veggie backing off of what Doc says. Doc and I, we do this. We've done this for a living. So we're not telling people what we heard. We're telling people what we know. And it's dangerous for anybody to take one of these pieces of equipment and apply them without training. If you put a tourniquet on wrong and it's not stopping the bleeding and they still got a pulse, it's pointless. I don't care if you got the latest and greatest Cat 7 tourniquet in your IFAK. I don't care what you got. It doesn't matter the equipment per se, more so than getting the training. And as far as the mindset, because that's something that we're going to talk about also on December the 12th, proper gear and mindset. If I'm going to go, I was at one of the Mike Brown protests back when I was in St. Louis in 2014.
Mm-hmm.
I went down there. My wife went down there. Or she wasn't my wife. This was a person I was dating at the time. And we went down there and we walked around and we were looking and seeing what was going on. And, we marched and stuff. And even my current wife, we've gone to some different protests in St. Louis. And I never brought anything. I didn't bring a first aid kit. I didn't have anything on me because I was just going as a spectator and a supporter of the protest. When I was down there, I saw people with first aid kits. I saw some people with IFAKs. Some of those people that had IFAKs had AR-15s. And I was just sitting there and I'm wondering, I'm like, when something goes down, I wonder if those guys are going to actually render aid, whether it's to their buddies or to the other bystanders, because the guys that came with Kyle Rittenhouse, they never fired a shot. They never shot anybody that night. They didn't kill anybody that night. He was the only one that engaged with his firearm that night. And the one guy that was with him, the one guy that was with him the longest, that ended up getting separated from him also, he had a medical bag too. So, like you said, it's all about the mindset and the intent.
Right. Let's see what I think Gail King, I think I pulled something up from what she had to kind of say.
The man charged with killing 2 people during protests in Wisconsin last year. Prosecutors shown dramatic drone video of the shooting as the defense kicks off its case. Alex Perez is at the courthouse in Kenosha, Wisconsin for us. Good morning, Alex.
Hey, good morning, Robin. That drone video was sent to a crime lab to be enhanced. As it was being shown, jurors were taking a lot of notes. This morning, Kyle Rittenhouse's defense calling more witnesses after prosecutors rested their case Tuesday. The prosecution showing jurors new key evidence, enhanced drone video that captured the moments Rittenhouse shot and killed Joseph Rosenbaum, the medical examiner who performed Rosenbaum's autopsy, testifying he believes of the several shots Rosenbaum suffered, it was the shot that entered his back that killed him.
If an individual is moving
All right. Now you see what I'm talking about? You see where my mindset is on this? Listening, watching, reading. The shot that killed him was to the back.
Mm-hmm.
And then for the judge not to allow that to be said and brought out in the trial, something is actually going on here. That's another conversation. If you rolled up on the individual shot 4 times, does it make a difference whether the entry wound is to the front, side, back? You want to stop the bleed, right?
right, exactly. Yeah, blah, blah. If you're trying to help them, you're trying to stop that bleeding.
Right. So does it matter?
Well, when you do your assessment, your number one priority is your serious bleeding. You want to treat that first. Anything that's going to cause that person to lose blood, because you can't replace that blood, and you only have so much blood to lose. So you want to stop the loss. So basically, when you're doing your assessment, you see which hole is indicating, or by the signs, what we would call life-threatening, arterial bleed, bright red in color, you losing a large amount, short period of time, constant flow. That's the injury you want to treat first. And some of those other gunshot wounds, they could be minor. I mean, it could be like a, in and out, through and through, whatever. But your priority is those life-threatening bleeds, what we call arterial bleeds, because those are the ones which you'll bleed to death the quickest.
Right. I heard today that he had 13 rounds of FMJs loaded in his AR-15 mag, and it's like, regardless of what bullet it was, when you go to render first aid, or if you're out there and you got to stop the bleed, you got to do the assessment, and then you got to get to work. Am I right, fellas?
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Truly, if you're outside, it doesn't matter what kind of bullet.
Right.
And somebody rendering first aid could come up on the scene after Kyle Rittenhouse went down the street. Like, what happened? I see he's bleeding, but is this a stab wound? Does that even matter?
Well, whatever caused the injury, we'll say the mechanism of injury, the end result is if you got some life-threatening bleeding going on, that's your number one priority. That's even before airway issue or whatever. Controlling massive hemorrhage is your number one priority. If they could have stabbed him with a stick, and it had the same result. So it doesn't really make a difference what caused the injury. The bottom line is he has the injury, or they have the injury, and you want to make sure you do something about it.
Okay.
Yeah, when you're on that scene, or when you come upon that scene, whether you're a professional EMS person or first responder, or even just a regular bystander, this is part of what we teach when we do these Stop the Bleed classes, and this is part of what we're going to be talking about on December 12th when we have our Zoom meeting. Is we're going to be teaching people about what to identify, what to look for when you come upon a person or people that are injured. And so we'll throw out an acronym called MARCH, like the month, MARCH. M is for massive hemorrhage control. As Doc said, you find a major lethal bleed, you got to control that lethal bleed before anything else. Your A is your airway, then R is the respirations, then C is circulation, then H is hypothermia. You want to make sure in that order, because if you come upon a person, let's say they have a lethal bleed and they're unresponsive, meaning they don't have a pulse, they don't have respirations, which equal that person is clinically dead. What do you do first? Do you do CPR or do you stop the major bleed? The answer is you got to do the major bleed control, or else the CPR is not going to matter, because CPR's purpose is to perfuse. You're mimicking the power of the heart and the heart's function, and that's to perfuse all the organs, tissues, cells in the body with oxygenated blood. And if you have a major bleed, that person's going to bleed out. So what are you circulating after a few minutes? If they bleed out. So you got to take care of that major bleed first. And like Doc said, it doesn't matter what the MOI or the mechanism of injury is, whether it's a stick, a knife, a gun, a bullet. If somebody gets stabbed with a stiletto, if they got a lethal bleed, you got to plug that hole.
He says,
you got to treat that injury.
Stab you. With some red bottoms.
Right.
Okay, so now the idea, why do you think the mindset is what it is? From the hours and hours of me kind of going over this, and y'all can help me out. Do you hear much about the victims after after the prosecutor was instructed not to call them victims? No.
But that's I've been looking at the situation, and I think that's unfortunately it appears like that judge is biased, and he's kind of setting the stage for the victims not to be looked at. They're victims. They definitely victims. But they're being viewed as non-victim, and I think that's intentional. But unfortunately, the guy who's sitting behind that gavel, he kind of set the stage for that.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that and that's ugly. No, go on.
One of the things that I keep thinking about when I think about this case is you have someone on the scene with a powerful rifle. You got this young man, this minor at the time, who was not even supposed to be in possession of that, couldn't even own it because he couldn't, purchase it on his own. And so for him to have that in that volatile situation, it's just a recipe for disaster. I mean, you as a gun owner and me as a gun owner, and like with what you do for the people that you train all the time, you always say, Anybody that has a gun, you got to train. And if you don't remember anything else, remember that. You got to train. And so the responsibility lies way more in the person with that large firearm, even in that volatile situation, because you got the ultimate power. You got the ultimate immediate power. Yeah, somebody can hit somebody with a skateboard, or they may kick somebody, or they may punch somebody, or throw a brick at somebody, but and any of those things can be lethal. You get hit the right way at the right time at the right angle, whatever. Any of those things can be a lethal blow.
Right.
Those bullets, any one of those bullets are way more lethal than a skateboard, a kick to the head, and a brick.
Right. All right, as we begin to wrap this up, I think that it's imperative that we kind of let people know on the 12th the depth of demonstrating. How much can you demonstrate, Doc? LP, how much can you demonstrate? How much without having them and bringing them to the class? I mean, giving them a little, let them taste it. Then look, you can take the full class, yada yada yada, whoop de whoop. How much can you demonstrate? Both you guys can answer that question.
Well, in regards to the stop the bleed, well, there's going to be portions of the presentation that I'll definitely be able to demonstrate pretty good. Some of it is just going to be more so visual and discussion. I mean, presented it in such a way that the person listening in or viewing in, you'll understand the concept, and that's, obviously it's better to be face to face, hands on, maybe to drill it in a little bit better, but it'll be presented in such a way that you'll be able to leave having to understand, okay, well, Doc say if I'm putting the tourniquet on, tourniquets are only used on arms and legs. So if I got a lethal bleed from another part of my body, the tourniquet don't work. So we don't want folks to think tourniquet is the answer to all lethal bleeds, because it's not. It's just arms and legs only.
Right.
And I'm just using that as an example. And if I put that tourniquet on, this is how I put it on. So there'll be portions of the training, well, visually, as I'm demonstrating it, you'll be able to pick it up right away. And from there on, you just need to practice it. And then other parts of the training that'll be more discussion based. So.
Oh, okay. All right, cool. And you, Mr. LP, sir?
The training that we're going to be doing on December 12th is really important for people to look at. It shows the average person who may not have any medical training, all the way to somebody that's equal in license or certification, as I may be, as Doc may be. We're going to focus on more visual and conceptual portions of this training, because again, even though it's going to be 3 hours, it's going to be broken up between the three of us, and we're all going to be hitting it from different angles. And so there's only so much that we can do via Zoom. And that's why we encourage people to continue to watch these shows that we do every Wednesday, to sign up for the Stop the Bleed classes that we offer, to sign up for these concealed carry and firearm safety and training classes that you offer, Griff, and your colleagues and your fellow instructors offer. We're giving people a bevy of knowledge, information, and resources to help them know how to survive in real time and be responsible, whether you be a responsible gun owner, whether you be a responsible bystander, whether you just be a responsible human being to another human being. People can't say that, hey, I didn't know that this information was available. If you don't go out and seek it, you can say that, but the onus is on you.
Right.
And this is why we continue to do what we're doing, because we don't want somebody to say, I wish I knew what to do.
Right. Yeah, and that's important. That's what makes what we do really, really important, because, hey, at the end of the day, you can't say you didn't know we were here. We did our
Right.
You understand? Right. Your blood is off our hands at the end of the day. We did what we were supposed to do. But give the people your information on how to get in touch with y'all, and let them know how they can support you or either come to the classes.
Okay. I'm Dexter, Doc Peggins, or Doc on social media site. You can follow me if you're on Instagram. You can follow me at steel.standing, STEEL.standing, STANDING. That's my Instagram. You can also go to my webpage, www.stillstandingllc.com, for any upcoming training that I might have posted. And also I sell medical equipment like individual, what we're talking about tonight, IFACs, individual first aid trauma kits. I do sell those. They're available for purchase. And also that's also where I list any upcoming classes I have scheduled.
Okay.
I'm able to be reached at my website, www.penton, that's P as in Paul, E-N, T as in Tom, O-N, pending.com. You also can reach me via social media. All of our links are on the pending.com site. You also can call the office number that's listed on there. If you want to see us on a weekly basis, come to Serious Minds on Griff's YouTube channel. We're here every Wednesday at 9 o'clock Eastern Time. We're always tackling some latest and greatest active violent incident that's going on, because it's not a matter of if, but when and where you're going to encounter one of these situations, and what are you going to do?
Right. All right. So someone asked a very critical question. I know we got to go, but I cannot overlook this. Professor Griff, would you classify those men as victims? My answer, just right off the rip, if those men came as protesters, then at that point they were protesters. Once they got shot in the chest and in the back, you're a victim.
Exactly. Yeah. I think I would define the victim as that individual in which some harm or some danger or something was rendered to. I mean, they became, like I said, their intent might have been out there expressing, freedom of choice, the right to protest, what have you. They're out there, but that did not make them a victim being a protester. What made them be a victim was being on the receiving end of a gunshot wound. That's what made them the victim. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's a beautiful thing just to sit and have this conversation, because people are drawing up their own kind of thing, which they should do. We see the hand of racism, white supremacy, with the blood dripping off of it in all of these situations. But to look at it from the perspective of rendering aid, whether you're a protester, the victim, or whatever it is, we have to at least have the discussion. And there's nothing wrong with having the discussion.
Right.
All right, so that's the only question that we're going to take. It was just very interesting because it came across over here on IG on whether or not, and I guess they addressed it to me. And my thing is simple. There's people that get hurt at drag races, stock car races, the Indy 500, football games, tennis matches, ping pong, at sports events all the time. They came as a fan. They ended up leaving on a stretcher as a victim.
Right. Of that incident that caused them to get hurt. Yeah.
Exactly. All right, gentlemen. It's been a beautiful evening. Love you guys to life. Enough respect, of course. Y'all already know that. And we'll talk through the course of the week, but I will see you guys next week. Thank you very much. Really appreciate you. Myself, Doc, and LP are going to be live on December 12th at 7 o'clock, a live Zoom call that we're going to do. And we're going to lay out some of the things that we discuss on this show every Wednesday night with a live demonstration. All right. I'll see you guys then. All right, fellas, we'll talk. All right.
Peace.
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 Peace. Doc, lay off that pork, bro.
Hey, you know I like a good bacon sandwich. I told you that there, Griff.
All right. All right, that was Doc, and that was my man LP. As usual, giving us some very timely information. The event is happening, hosted by myself, and of course, we got Mr. Dexter Doc Piggins and Larry Penton, and myself. We're going to be dealing with after the first 38 seconds, a Zoom meeting on December 12th at 7 p.m. The cost is only $45. All right, fam, make it happen. Of course, you can pay that $45 directly to Professor Griff. That's www.paypal.me/Professor Griff Corp. All right, this is Professor Griff. I got to get ready to get out of here. Quan, don't hurt nobody. All right, we'll talk. All right, fam, I got to go. Peace. Ba 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 da da da.